Thank you. Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, good to see you. I wanted to follow up a second on Mr. Quigley's point about the fraud and identity theft. You know, it strikes me that the number he cited was $5.8 billion,
Correct.
Which is more than half, I guess, of your entire agency's budget. And we use the term fraud, identity theft, but in effect it is your agency sending refunds to people in that amount. Is that not correct? So it's $5.8 billion
in effect,
of
illegal
taxpayers' money being sent to people whom do not deserve it and who are criminals.
Exactly.
And it's being and permissive in some aspect through this agency and enabled through this agency.
Well, that's right. We'll process this year 150 million tax returns. We've already processed about 75 million. 60 million of them got refunds. And one of the reasons I've said we need to get W-2s earlier, before I got to this agency, I assumed the IRS got the W-2s at the same time we all get them as workers and taxpayers. We get them in March. So we're actually able to match, but it's pay and chase in that regard. We have very sophisticated filters.
And that was my follow-up to that is, so what is the percentage of these tax payments or refunds that you are issuing that occur during that window in which one can earliest file and when you receive the corresponding documents that verify the income and the identity of the person?
Well, as I said, we've already, we haven't gotten the W-2s yet, and we've already sent out 60 million refunds. You know, close to 80% of people get a refund with their return.
And so within just a few days of one filing online, they could have this fraudulent payment or refund from the IRS within a few days deposited on a debit card that they might have purchased at a convenience store without any match of identity whatsoever, and there's no policy that prevents that.
You've got it right. The policy, the only thing that prevents it, the way we stopped $20 billion of that, is with a sophisticated set of filters that look at the return coming in, and each year we get better at figuring out which ones look like they're fraudulent. We hold them, we write taxpayers, we ask for authentication. We've leapfrogged the problem. In the old days when we sent out checks, you know, you get your refund in the summer and well after the filing season. By being more efficient, by getting almost 90% now of people filing electronically, we tell people we'll get you a refund within 21 days. And so for the vast majority of people, that's terrific. They get their refund in January or February. One suggestion we're looking at is if we can't get the W-2s earlier in the matching, the question is, do we actually go to a situation where we don't give people refunds? The problem with moving 60 million, for instance, now refunds until we get the W-2s is we'd be trying to process then, by the time you get done with 100 million returns in about a 2-week period, and even our system can't do that. So
it strikes me rather odd, and I imagine the committee and the American people, that the Internal Revenue Service would, without verification, send out a refund just because they received a submission online through an online portal without verification whatsoever and deposit that money to an unverified account without being able to track it to an individual. But that's what happens, and it's $5.8 billion just in 1 year.
Right, and $20 billion didn't go out because the filters were able to determine where it was those refunds were fraudulent and, in fact, shouldn't have gone out. That's one of the reasons one of the reasons I've pushed, and we've gotten a lot of support but not final legislation, is we need to get those W-2s in January, not in March. We need to be able to get 1099s earlier.
That is not something that is handled through the agency, but that is actually law.
That's law.
And there's nothing that your agency can do. So it's just a wide open field during that period of time. If I could add just a couple more questions to this. So you would accept a request for refund in this same time period from an overseas IP address as well?
Right. We have filters without getting into details. Depending where the return comes from, we now can identify devices as they're coming from. We've limited the number of refunds that can go to a card. So everybody doesn't get totally treated the same way. So if you're filing for a refund from someplace else, we take that into consideration.
Is there a limit to the number of returns that can be requested through a single IP address?
And not at this point. It's just a filter that we use. There's a limit. You can only get 3 refunds to a bank. We can't distinguish between debit cards and bank accounts. We're working with the industry to try to figure out if we could. If we knew it was a debit card, it would be another item that we could add to our filters. And the industry is starting to cooperate. with us, and we hope that at some point we'll be able to use that as an indicator. Right now, we have no idea. The numbers are the same. It could be a bank account, could be a debit card.
Well, and I wouldn't at all point the blame on the industry. I don't believe it's the industry. I believe that it's an agency that, without verification, sends out refunds very rapidly, very quickly, and to folks who are criminals and have no verification whatsoever, and deposits that money knowing that they will never get it back. And all the same, knowing that $5.8 billion could go to defense, it could go to so many other needs within our country right now. It could go to lowering taxes on hardworking Americans, but instead criminals all across the country, if not across the world, are receiving these tax refunds. And I'll just make one other note. I heard you bring up a minute ago tax preparers as one of the issues. I don't believe that to be so. I know tax preparers from a professional perspective are very respected in their community. They're registered and oftentimes with the IRS and other associations and do a great job. It's the criminals who are the problem, not the tax preparers who, from a professional perspective, work very hard and have a small business and are just trying to provide a portal for individuals to file their taxes lawfully in a very complicated tax system.
If I could explain, I think that's exactly right. If the 700,000 registered who have PINs can file with us returns, about over 350,000 are accountants, CPAs, registered enrolled agents who clearly do a great job. A big chunk of those 400,000 who don't have any certifications or qualifications are educated and mean well and do a good job. But there's a chunk of them at the edge that unfortunately is larger than anybody would like, who either have no knowledge about the tax code at all and are simply winging it, or are consciously trying to cheat. And those are the people we spend a lot of time now still, without an ability to regulate them. We spend a lot of time monitoring them. We've thrown some in jail. We look for schemes. But again, it's kind of a pay and chase, and that's the only reason I think that taxpayers would be better off if they knew anybody filing their return had some minimum level